YouTube Ozzy the Goat House is back. Today I'm ranking every single NFL playoff team from worst to first, 14 down to 1. And I'm basing this off of how I feel about each of these teams as a playoff team. So not really their chances to win in the first round. How much damage could they do in the playoffs? How do they compare to each other? That's where I came up with these rankings. At the end, we also get our Twitter subscribers rankings. They all filled out their rankings. I averaged them out. So we'll take a look at the highest rank for each team, the lowest, and where they ended up being. So pretty cool. Excited about this here. We got all kinds of playoff content already, full playoff predictions, pick'ems with the other guys tonight, Tuesday night, score predictions on Wednesday. We'll do this every single week. Also have an updated mock draft, more off-season content to roll out. We got you guys covered, as you can tell. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Very important to follow that Twitter. Link pinned in the comments for that. News, rumors, updates, latest on all the coaching changes there. Sponsor links down below as well. Code GOAT, Walk the Mock, GLD Shop, Liquid IV, rocking that Chiefs chain from the GLD Shop. A lot of cool stuff there. Again, links pinned in the comments. Check it out. 14 for me is going to be the Seattle Seahawks. There was a stretch of the season where they looked like a pretty damn solid football team. I would have projected them not only to be in the playoffs, but better than a 7th seed and better than ranked 14th. But they haven't been really playing as well recently. Regular season doesn't really mean a whole lot for the postseason, though. I just believe they have the worst defense in the playoffs, which defense comes into play a little bit more in the playoffs. It still is an offensive era, I'd say. Offense, that's kind of what they rely on. That's kind of what they rely on there. And at any given time, we've seen it here and there. They can go a little cold with the running game, and then Geno can slip up with the turnovers, perhaps. So I'm just not really trusting them. I don't really trust them to get by the 49ers in the first round, but if they do, I'm not really trusting them against really anybody they match up with, mainly because of that defense. I think anybody in the playoffs, everybody in the playoffs is going to have their best offensive game plan. There's a lot of good offense out there going against probably the weakest defense in the playoffs. That's mainly the issue for me. They were a little fortunate to maybe squeeze in the playoffs. They did have a good run during one portion of the season, though. 13, which a couple teams make this very tricky to rank. I do this video every year, and it's usually pretty easy for me, but it's a little tricky this year because of two teams. I'll say the Dolphins and the Ravens, because we don't know if their quarterbacks are playing. If Tua is out, and he's out for the whole playoffs, and if he's out this week, he might be out for the whole playoffs because they very well could lose this week. But if he's out for the entire thing, we knew that right now. Let's say we knew that. I'd probably rank them at 14 below the Seahawks. But I think there's a chance he plays this week. I'm not expecting him to play this week. But with this video, we're not really going to judge, if a team is going to win or lose in the first round. How are they matched up with the other playoff teams? What are your thoughts on them as a playoff team? I'm not going to put them at last. I think Tua could play games in the future here if they somehow win in the first round. And they're somewhat of a dangerous team, maybe like we saw from them, during the season at one point. Defense could be better. But they still stop the run at an all right level. They can get after the quarterback. They got some playmakers, looking at Howard and Holland. So this is kind of a sneaky team. They just really need Tua to be in there. So that's why it's tricky to rank. Like I said, if you guaranteed me Tua will not play at all in the playoffs, no matter what, I ranked him at 14. If you guarantee me Tua was playing in wild card round of the playoffs and on, I ranked them much better than 13. So it is very tricky to rank them. Their defense has been a little underwhelming. I still think it's decent. Again, they can stop the run. Not the best stop and run, but they can stop it. They can get their hands on the ball, create plays. They got some decent pass rushers. Usually those types of guys take over in the playoffs. Look at Phillips and Chubb, guys like that, Wilkins in the interior. It's a sneaky defense. It should be better than what it is, though. That's the issue there. But they're at 13. Difficult team to rank. I'm going to put the Bucs at 12. I think other people are maybe a little higher on the Bucs, mainly because they started to heat up a little bit. That's maybe a little bit of stretch saying they were heating up. And they got Tom Brady. And, playoffs usually stay the same type of quarterbacks win. So understandable. They have the experience. They could definitely beat the Cowboys in the first round. That's pretty close to a 50-50 game for me. But this team is not that good this year. That's my issue. Coaching hasn't been great. I think Bowles will have a good defensive game plan for the wild card round. Brady's been solid, but not as good as he was. The offensive line's not as good as it used to be. The The receiver unit's not as good as what we saw in the past when healthy. Mike Evans really took off recently, though. The running game, could be the worst in all of the playoffs, and I think that's, it's pretty key to have a pretty balanced attack. Of course, you want to be able to be better at passing than running, perhaps. That's okay, but you want to have this somewhat of balance there. Defensively, they don't stop the run. That's a big thing with them, is they always were the best stopping the run, and that's actually, believe it or not, stopping the run is extremely important when winning, trying to win big games, believe it or not, even though it's a passing league. And they don't do that like they used to either. Somebody's always constantly beat up. So, I think they snuck in the playoffs because they barely got by some teams they should have a easier time with. Look at that, barely getting by the Saints in that game, the Cardinals. So I think matching up against the other playoff teams, it's a little tough. So again, if Tua was full go the whole playoffs, I'd probably have the Dolphins out of the Bucs. But they're not playing the best football right now. They're beat up. They're probably without Tua for at least a game, and they could be out after a game. So I put the Bucs ahead of them. But, maybe they play better against better teams here in the playoffs. We'll see. The Giants are at 11. A little tricky, too, because you look at the Giants on paper. It's like, do you even want to put them this high? Because they have Daniel Jones, who's played better this year. They don't have the best weapons for them besides Saquon Barkley. And, of course, guys have stepped up. Isaiah Hodgins, as an example, has stepped up. But they don't have the biggest playmakers, and they don't have the best quarterback in the playoffs, not nearly the best, and that ends up being a very important thing come playoff time. I think they're pretty well coached, though, and that's why they're here. They have a interesting blitz game, on their defense, which causes some problems. They don't stop the run too well. That could hurt them here in the playoffs. So it's a tricky one. I think they play better than what the talent shows. Don't get me wrong, they got a lot of good young talent there. And they play, I think they're coached pretty damn well. I think they have a shot against the Vikings in the first round. I think that's pretty close to a 50-50 game. I just don't think they have much of a shot after that. Again, comparing to the Vikings who they play in the first round, which these rankings aren't about. I want to kind of compare them to the whole field and how I feel as them being a playoff team. But I think that's kind of close to a 50-50 game. Giants and Vikings, I think the Vikings are the favorites, understandable. But I think they're pretty even. But why? Maybe they'll be a little different in the rankings. I think the Giants almost have, I hate to say no shot, but close to no shot after that, second round, where the Vikings, not giving them a great shot, I think they have a much better shot, like how they match up, stack up with the field there. So I got the Giants at 11 here. Heading into the wild card round, and we'll update these rankings every week, of course. 10, I'm going to go with the Ravens. Another tricky team to rank because Lamar Jackson, is he going to play this week? Is he not? It's sounding like he might. One day I'm hearing it sound like he might not. Now I'm hearing he might, but it also sounds like he's not 100%. So if you told me Lamar Jackson was out for the playoffs, the Ravens will be, at the bottom. And we have that Tua situation as well. If you told me Lamar Jackson was good, full go, 100% for the full playoffs, no matter what, they'd be better than 10. They'd be better than 10 right now. But Lamar possibly play this week. It doesn't sound like he's 100%. Will he be able to, or all of a sudden, is he going to start running like he used to? Because they're kind of holding back on that. Is he not going to be able to do that? So a lot of questions here. Ravens haven't been, they have a great record, but they haven't been playing the best ball. I worry about them against the better teams because what they got going for them is their defense, but they've really been beaten up. And their defense is good against anybody, I think, but they've really been beaten up on the weaker offenses. So now stacking up against the playoff teams, some really good offenses. Bengals in the first round. You kind of look at the outlook when doing this exercise here. You look at teams like the Bills and the Chiefs. Who's ahead for them? Is the defense going to look that dominant? I don't think so. I don't really get that feeling. A very good defense. It might be a little misleading on where their statistics are when it comes to their defense. I do like that they stop the run. I do like that it's just a problem to deal with Lamar Jackson if he's back in. But my issue is, even with Lamar in, is he 100%? Do they have enough on offense? Their passing game isn't great, mainly due to the lack of receivers and Lamar kind of being out, being a little rusty, being a little injured perhaps. It just doesn't, and their running game doesn't even feel as good And it's solid, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really feel as good as the past. I think they've had better teams in the past, and it never really felt like they were built to make a run in the playoffs. Then the style of game that they play, like they could beat the Titans, but can they get by anybody else after that? That's kind of how it always felt, even though I was a likable team, and they've had some spots where they play really good at running the ball, playing defense in the past. So just not a lot. If Lamar plays, they could beat their rival in the Bengals. I don't really see them getting by that point. And the Bengals are heavy favorites for a reason. I shouldn't say heavy, but decent favorites for a reason there. So I got the Ravens at 10. I do think durability, health kind of comes into play there. Number 9, I'm going to go with the Chargers. Love me some Justin Herbert. Love the weapons. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams if he plays. Love Austin Eckler. Gerald Everett. Love that signing when they got him. He's been good. They could get Slater back. He's not going to play this week, but they opened up that practice window. So if they win, I think it's a very strong possibility he plays next week. So that helps. So they got playmakers. They got one of the better quarterbacks in football. They got playmakers on defense. The pass rush is getting better because Joey Bosa back in the mix. They got some good pass rushers there. And that is where when you explain it that way, it's like, man, the Chargers, they could be sneaky because they have those things. They have the quarterback. They have the weapons. The offensive line can get better if they win and Slater comes back. They have pass rush. They have playmakers on defense. Those seem like the keys to success, to being a lot better than 9. When you put it that way, I almost want to put them higher. But they don't have Slater back yet. I'm not thrilled about the coaching over there in the big games. Sometimes things will be going their way in the big games, and questionable play calling and then questionable decisions kind of let teams back in. So that's something. And they really struggle stopping the run. They've been doing a little better recently, but when we get to we got to explain this every year. When we get to the playoffs, game plan is the key. Teams will find your biggest weakness. They will take advantage. They'll pounce on it. So, and the history shows every single year that, if you can't stop the run, it's an easy way for somebody to beat you, to control the clock and beat you. You're not going to get very far. So I do worry about that. And it starts with the first game against the Jags. But can they make a run with that much of a weakness in there? But they have a big-time quarterback. They have big-time playmakers. But it's a team that just slips up sometimes. It slips up, and it doesn't look pretty. Doesn't look good. So there's some things to really like about the Chargers. There's some things where I really worry about them when it comes to making that big run. And at one point before the year, I thought they could be an AFC Championship type team. They got the talent in there, but it's hard for me to trust them to make that kind of run. But again, they have that talent. 8, I'm actually going to go with the Jags. That might be a little higher than other people have, but why? Why do I do? And the Jags are getting better as the year goes on. One, Peterson, the connection there, the chemistry, all that's getting better. But the main reason why is I think the Jacksonville Jaguars could beat you in multiple different ways. You look at their offense, Trevor Lawrence in that passing game, Christian Kirk, Evan Engram, the other receivers too, but those guys really taking off right now. Their quarterback is playing great right now, and that shows that they can win with their passing game, but you can't forget their running game is pretty solid too. When it's on, it's on. ETN is an electrifying player. Can also catch the ball in the backfield, downfield as well. Offensive lines, believe it or not, is actually playing all right now. So I think they could beat you in multiple ways, but then you look at the defense. They've been winning in multiple ways on defense. They're creating plays. They're getting after the quarterback. They're pretty decent stopping the run. Is there something that they do at a very, very, very high level? I don't think they have that, where they do something at an extremely high level, but I think they do everything well, and I love the balance there. I love that they have good coaching, and I love that everything's getting better as the year goes on. So for those reasons, the only knock here, maybe why you shouldn't have them at 8 or that high, is the inexperience. And there's been games this year where they've outplayed their opponent, and they still lost. Can they go finish out games? So I guess those are the questions, but I like that they can win in multiple different ways. I like the balance there. They do everything pretty well. So I got the Jags at 8. I'm going to put the Vikings at 7. A lot to like about this Vikings offense. There's just playmakers everywhere. Kirk Cousins has been playing well. The running game's the interesting thing. The running game hasn't been as good, or Dalvin Cook as well hasn't been as good as they were in the past. So that's something that they could trying to get going. But they're a pass-first team. They're pretty damn good and clutch when it comes to the passing game. So they can win with their offense alone, obviously. And you like to think that they can still win with the running game. And they have here and there, but it has been a little underwhelming. But you'd think they could still do that. And they play the Giants in the first-round team, that pretty good defense, but they struggle to stop the run a little bit. So maybe could focus on that. perhaps. I do worry about the offensive line, but it does sound like Garrett Bradbury can come back, but no Brian O'Neill, so bad timing with some of the injuries there. Defensively, they've been bad this year. They're probably, I talk about Seattle, I think, is the worst defense in the playoffs. I think the Vikings probably would be next. They're really not far off from that, but they've played better recently. They actually have. They switched a little bit more man coverage. They switched to blitzing more. So they've actually been better, and even in the games where they gave up a lot of points, if you go back and look, it really wasn't their defense giving all those points. Special teams mistakes, pick six in a Packers game as well. So defense, bad, but playing a bit better. It's just, they just can't. They're a weird team. They won 13 games. Very clutch, very good in the fourth quarter, very good, best in the football in the fourth quarter. Have that explosive offense, but when they play bad, they play bad. It's only been a handful of times. There's teams that have way more than that, but in the playoffs, it's about staying consistent, playing the best team week after week. So they're bound to probably have one of those slip-ups, and maybe that's why they're not higher, even though the offense they present would probably rank better than 7. 6, I'm going to go with the Cowboys. Haven't been playing the best football recently. Maybe they're trying to save something because usually they're playing great football. They go into the playoffs, and then they kind of choke. They let us down. So maybe they're trying to save some things there. But they have multiple, when they're on, they have multiple ways to beat you. Passing game, Dak's got to take care of the ball better, but they have the weapons as well. In the running game, they can win with purely the running game with that running back duo. And you look at defense, in the beginning of the year, it looked like the best defense in football. It's really dropped down since. Some injuries played a part in that, but they got pass rush. They got some playmakers in the back end. They don't stop the run overly well, but it's not the worst. But I like that they have multiple ways to win. It's just they have not been playing great football, and they really could get upset in the first round there. So they're number 6. I think the 5 really separate themselves, and it's really hard separating the top 5. The Eagles are the number 1 seed in the NFC. It's tough having that 5 because all the 5 of these teams feel like number 1 or number 2 teams. The Eagles, the tough part is Hurts being out recently. He came back to the last game, but I wish they were just still on their groove. There was no hiccups, throughout that, keeping that momentum going. But it's one of those situations where the playoffs are a little different, and the good thing they got to bye, but can this offense continue to roll? I think it could, but somewhat of a question. Can it continue to roll, Hurts and company in the playoffs? And then defensively, I don't think the defense is as strong as it was earlier in the year. Some injuries to the pass rush unit there. But they were winning with their that's why they were so great for most this year. Is they can win with the pass game, the run game. Just weeks where they look like the best passing team, best running team, best offensive line. I still think they're the best offensive line. And there's weeks where they're winning with their pass rush. They're winning because their secondary is locking everybody down and getting their hands on the ball. Everything's still pretty damn good. I just don't feel, maybe they're saving some of it again for the playoffs, but I just don't feel like maybe it's all the way there for all of those spots, but it can definitely pick back up in the playoffs. But I'm pretty confident with the NFC. I look at the NFC, I'm pretty confident with 2 teams getting the NFC Championship game. So I'm expecting to see the Eagles getting the NFC Championship game, and then all it takes is one game to do it, to get there, and then one more game to win it all. So even though they're ranked 5, this very easily could be the number 1 team at the end of the day, very easily. So it's just tough splitting up these 5. It's just going to come down to can they get back in that groove where they're, it's so good when you have multiple ways to win, because it's just difficult when you're that good. It's difficult for other teams to beat you. But if something slips up one week, because that's just when you're playing the best week after week, that's kind of what happens. If the passing game's not great, okay, the running game's on, and it's working, or the secondary is making big time plays, so, will they have that in the playoffs here? I think they could. Definitely think they could. 4, I'm going to go with the Bengals. Again, all these are so close. I like the way the Bengals are playing down the stretch of the season. Joe Burrow's playing as good as anybody in football. Those weapons are as good as anyone in football. I like that. They don't really have as much balance as I would like them to, but they have balance in terms of the pass game, in the run game. I think they really could. They could really throw teams off, getting Mixon and P. Ryan going, and okay, how do we game plan for this? There's so much we got to account for, worry about. That is the Bengals' trump card, maybe, where they are maybe the best team in football. Offense lines played better, but that's kind of the thing that can let them down. If they match up with the wrong team, if they match up with that team with just a fantastic pass rush, which I don't know if there's too many elite pass rushers in the playoffs still, but they're in trouble. Kind of like they got by the Titans still. Titans don't have much of it. They weren't presenting much of an offense. But in the Super Bowl with the Rams as well, that was kind of, at the end of the day, the issue. So that could be the same thing because they may have the very worst offensive line in the playoffs here. But defense, well coached, plays pretty solid. It's maybe not the flashiest defense, but it gets the job done. It's really good at game planning and throwing teams off. So I like the balance across the board for the Bengals. They're playing as good as anyone. Their quarterback's playing as good as anyone. I got them at 4. I originally had the Niners at 2. I was back and forth between my number 2 team, my current number 2 team, and the Niners. The difference, why I was like back and forth. I'm like, this is so close. I had the Niners at 2 because they're actually healthy right now, which is weird for the Niners, and their defense is so by far the best defense. But then I remember the quarterback difference between my number 2 team and the Niners, and Purdy's been playing good. He can continue to play well, but I keep saying this every time we get to the playoffs, we know how important quarterback is, but we're left remembering that, okay, it's that important. So it could just take 1 week for Purdy to slip up. That's what I'm big if they somehow got that 1 seed, because it had been minus a week there, obviously, for them. It could just take 1 week. I expect them to be in the NFC Championship game. If you saw my predictions, I had them going to the Super Bowl. I'm a little scared with that prediction, though, because of, again, the inexperience at quarterback, and playoffs are a whole different game. So we'll see how teams game plan for them. It's going to take one team to draw up a crazy game plan where he just cannot dissect it. He cannot figure out what's going on, and that could be an issue. But the Niners could still win with their defense because it is by far the best in football. But the quarterback thing is maybe where we've got to split hairs. What splits them up with my number 2 right now. But the offense is as good as it's ever been right now. They can win with multiple ways on offense. They can wear you out, pound the football. Christian McCaffrey with his versatile, play style, I suppose. In many ways, he can beat you. But, Debo coming back, George Kittle. I mean, Ayuk and Jennings playing well as well. The offensive line's playing well. And they're just so well coached. Maybe the best in football when you look at the offense and defense with Shanahan and Ryan's probably the best in football. And that is huge. People forget coaching is huge for the playoffs. So there are reasons you want to put the Niners at 1. I think the quarterback, in the back of your mind, could the quarterback slip up? Can someone just put together a master game plan to just really cause him some issues? It's possible. But this might be the current hottest team in football right now. I got them at 3. They feel like a number 1 team as well. I got the Bills at 2. And maybe the reason not to put the Bills, I had to kind of go back and forth on this. Maybe the reason not to put them as high as 2 is because they are a little beat up. If they had Von Miller right now, I'd probably have them at 1. Because that's kind of what the Bills been missing. The only thing from winning maybe multiple Super Bowls already is getting after the quarterback. They got good ball players, but they just have not been able to get the quarterback down in the crucial moments where they should in the past. So if they had Von Miller, I'd probably have them at 1. But then you look at, obviously they've been without Micah Hyde for most of the year, and then DeMar Hamlin out as well. So down to a third safety to pair with Jordan Poyer. Secondary is maybe not playing as good as it was in those past years as well. So that's where you get a little nervous, those two things. But what you like, you have one of the very best players in football in Josh Allen, and he brings that extra element, him on the ground. His running game is just such a problem for teams to deal with, such a game plan problem. And the field just gets the defense gets so stretched out and stressed out, because of that. They can beat you downfield underneath. I like that they got the running game going a little bit more recently. Singletary, Cook, these guys could actually be a factor. So that's a good sign as well. And defensively, they still play, they're missing some guys. They still play very solid defense. They still play some confusing zone defense that will throw off a lot of offenses. If you don't have the smartest or the best quarterback in football, it'll still throw you off a bit. Maybe they let everyone down a little bit in that Chiefs game last year, but still a solid, well-coached defense. So I got the Bills at 2, and I got the Chiefs at number 1. It just felt like the best team for a lot of this year. I know the Eagles felt like the best regular season perhaps, but I think the Chiefs have the best player in football, and Patrick Mahomes, they may very well have the best defensive player at the moment. Is debatable, but it's definitely up there in Chris Jones. I think the pass rush is getting better because of that, because of him, because of guys like Frank Clark, George Karlaftis, Carlos Dunlap. Their defense stops the run way better than it has in the past as well, so I love that. I think the young secondary is getting better and better. They're all kind of coming together and getting better, so that's kind of getting unnoticed right now. This defense might be a little bit better than it has been in the past, and they've had some really good moments too. And they had Tyrann Mathieu playing in his prime, but overall, in terms of balance, it actually might be more balanced in the past. You don't have Tyreek Hill, but you still got Kelsey. I think MVS is getting going lately. They can get McCole Hardman came back recently. He's getting going. Jerick McKinnon might be the most underrated player in football right now. This is a major X factor. He's a game plan problem, not just Mahomes and Kelsey. I think McKinnon is a game plan factor. Passing game, receiving game for him, running game. I think he's by far their best back, but I like that they mix it up a little bit. There's some times where they don't use a whole lot of McKinnon. Recently, they have been. And last year in the playoffs, they used a decent amount. I hope they don't go back to just having those random games where they don't use him enough. They got to use him. He's that much of an X factor, in my opinion. So they have multiple ways to beat you. They have the best player in football, maybe the best defensive player in football right now. They're getting better. They're just such a problem to deal with. They're fast. They're extremely well coached. Those are the reasons why I have the Chiefs. And then they can score on anybody. That's the big thing. They're an offensive era. That's the reason why I have the Chiefs at 1. So very interesting. Like I said at the beginning of the video, our Twitter subscribers, they used to call it super followers. Now it's called subscribers. You get bonus content, bonus involvement like this. So I made a post for our subscribers only to see. And you guys, just like I did, ranked the playoff teams. I took them, put them all together, and averaged everything out. You guys came away with the Chiefs at 1. The highest ranked by a single person was 1. Not a surprise. So the lowest somebody had them ranked was 4. I was a little surprised by that, down at 4. But again, the top 5 teams you all could argue are 1. So I guess understandable. And then where I had them, I'm Riz, by the way, and if you didn't know that. If I had them ranked at 1. We just went over that. Niners, the highest rank was 1. The lowest rank was 4. I had them ranked at 3, but I was back and forth between 2 and 3. I think they're the hottest team in football right now. I love the way they play football. If I had to pick a team like that, my favorite team, the way they play across the board, whether they're coached, probably be the Niners, just based on how they play. But yeah, I kind of have that 2-3 range. We see the high 1, low 4. Bills, pretty similar. High 1, low 5. Somebody had them all the way down at 5. Maybe a little surprising, but it might be the negatives I explained. They don't have that pass rush. They don't have Von Miller. They're very beat up. Not very, but down to a third safety out there. Offensive line you wonder about too, but having Josh Allen, having Stephon Diggs, having the solid coaches here, but so maybe you can understand it. If the Dolphins are fully healthy, they give them some problems this year, so who knows there. The Bengals, highest rank was 2, lowest rank was 5. All that makes sense to me. I had them ranked at 4. They come in at 4 for the subscribers as well. 5. Eagles, the highest rank for them was 2, lowest was 5. I had them at 5. They end up at 5 too. It felt weird for me ranking the Eagles at 5 because it just feels like they're better, but there's 5 teams that all feel like they're better than that. 6, Cowboys, 6 high, 9 the lowest rank. Yeah, Cowboys are weird because they've been playing really bad football lately. I also had 6. Vikings, Chargers look like they're in the same boat. Highest rank was 7, lowest rank was 9. I had the Vikings at 7 as well, so that matches out. I actually had the Chargers 1 spot lower than this ended up. There's a lot to like. The Chargers are weird too. There's a lot to like about them. There's an easy way to beat them, and that's the running game. And when that's present, or running against them, I should say. Usually when that's present, it's not teams don't end up really being that good of a playoff team. Good playoff team is a team that can win multiple games and put up good fights there. So, but they got such good talent. It's a tricky one. Bucks, highest rank was 6. Believe in the Tom Brady experience there and the talent on paper that they do have. Lowest rank was 12. I had them at 12. You guys had them at 9. That 6 rank definitely helped them out there. Somebody ranked the Jags at 6 too. I thought I was going to be higher than everyone on the Jags. I had them ranked at 8. Somebody had them at 6. You do like the balance of the Jags and how much better they're getting, but somebody ranked them as low as 13. So they were kind of all over the place like the Bucks as well. The Ravens, 10 was the high, 13 was the low. That's pretty low for the Ravens, but again, factoring in that Lamar could be out, maybe not 100%. I had them at 10. Fans ranked them at 11 with the average there. The Dolphins, somebody ranked them as high as 6. Again, when they were fully healthy, they were one of the hottest teams in football. So who knows there? They played the Bills pretty tough both times. So if they're fully healthy, they win that game. Maybe they can kind of keep on going, perhaps. You just kind of wonder about Tua being in there in the first game. Start to doubt it a little bit. 6 high, 14 low, which is the very bottom. I had them at 13. You guys had them at 12. Giants are also tricky because on paper you don't want to rank. I had them at 11. You don't want to rank them nearly that high. Do we trust Daniel Jones? So you can understand the 13 ranking here. The high was 10, the low was 14. And I'm blocking the Seahawks, but 11, 14, and 14. So a lot of people rank them at the very bottom, kind of like I did. You can definitely argue them 12 or 13 as well, though. It'd be something. I think that'd be the biggest upset of the week if the Seahawks beat the 49ers, just because the 49ers are one of the best in football. They're the hottest in football, but it's just a terrible, terrible matchup for the Seahawks. Probably the worst possible. So this was a lot of fun. I like how we did this here, how we got to average it out and see where everyone had some teams there. But I remember that the Chiefs ended up at 1 because they had a lot of high votes. I know the Niners had 2 first place votes actually, or in one, I should say one more. Was it 2 or 1 more? Well, I think 1 more actually than the Bills had. So that was interesting as well. But all those teams are kind of in the same boat. I think the top 5 are kind of in a league of their own right now. Feel like grab 4 of the 5 teams. 4 out of those 5 teams will be in the conference championship games, but you never know. You never know. Maybe those teams 6 through 14, somebody can sneak up in there. Be fun, be fun if we see something a little different this year. But I had a lot of fun making this one. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments, your guys' rankings. We're always talking with you on Twitter. We also have constant talk, news, rumors, updates on there. So check it out. Link pin in the comments for that, as well as our sponsors. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on while you're here. It'd be much appreciated. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.